Hi, everyone. It's great to be here live with you today for the next 30 minutes talking about AI governance. My name is Dani Almeida. I am the founding member of the AI Guild, the go-to community for data and business professionals advancing AI adoption. Welcome, everyone that is joining us live. Please be an active member and ask questions. So you can type them here in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the session. Today with me is Rasmus. He is an AI Guild member based in Denmark. He is the Chief Technology Officer at 2021 AI. Before that, he has worked as project manager, technical sales, product owner, chief and lead architect, senior consultant, software engineer, and a lot more. And now at 2021 AI, they are offering pre-built AI models, delivering an AI platform, and AI governance. So thank you for joining me today for this fireside chat about AI governance.
Thank you very much,
Rasmus,
Dani.
Rasmus, to get started, would you share with us how did you get to where you are today? You have such an interesting journey.
Thank you very much for that, Dania. So I guess from my perspective, I'm actually I have a really burning passion for disruptive technologies, and I've had that since the beginning of my career. And especially, one thing is to understand it and to sort of deep dive into it and try it out, and then see how that fits into a business context, how that can be used in the businesses around. So that's what I've been focusing on and working with. And during that journey, you can say in the beginning, have worked a lot with data as well. So I had a period, for example, working in Dun & Bradstreet, working with a lot of different data sets on companies. That was back in the early 2000s and the beginning or end of 90s. And basically, that was a very interesting company because they had, many hundreds of millions of organizations and companies registered, and just at that time doing simple indexing and stuff like that was actually very difficult because they didn't have the resource and IT computation that they had today. So in that sense, it was a very interesting journey for me. And I think data and even when in the beginning of 2000s and end of 90s, also AI and machine learning at that time was a topic, but it was not really. It's not until in the couple of weeks, the last couple of years that that this has become more popular. So that's sort of the journey that I've been on throughout the last 20 years and so. And basically, you can say, so my role currently is that I'm the CTO of 2021 AI, and I've been also working with helping small businesses and also working within standardization communities on AI standards as well. So it's a very interesting journey that we are on here in Europe and in the world regarding AI in general. So I think it's an exciting time to be alive, definitely. So
yeah, it's cool. And something that I saw on the 2021 AI page is something that is very much aligned with the AI Guild, which is this idea of advancing AI adoption, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that we are really at that stage of the field that it's developing to not only research and proof of concept, but really about deploying it and reaping the benefits. And I think this is all about advancing AI adoption. And also, if we start a bit on the topic of today, like AI governance, I understand that There is already a lot of complexity in the process to deploy AI, and adding this AI governance step is making it even more complex. So, is that always needed? Can you share your thoughts on the importance of AI governance?
Yeah, so I would say first of all, why AI governance? Because I think many companies and out there are asking themselves, well, why should we do this, right? And I think for me, this is about building AI-driven technologies and doing that in a more efficient and hopefully positive, and creating a hopefully positive impact. But there is the flip coin of that, which is that the regulation out there and the regulation that will come in the coming years, uh, I think will be probably the key to allowing humans to coexist in peaceful and productive futures. So in that sense, I think the aspect of regulation on the AI technologies, I think is a crucial element going forward. So once you talk about regulation, then you also need to talk about governance and how to apply that in the organizations and the businesses around. So I think so really that's where it starts. And you can say that these AI algorithms that are there, you can also say, look at it from a sort of a now perspective and in the future. And I
Mhm.
think most people would agree that, well, maybe 50 or 100 years from now, AI regulations will be much more important than it is today, right? But even if you look at present time, uh, there are AI algorithms out there today that are making critical decisions, significant and serious, that are sort of affecting people's lives. And I think this is why, it's also so important to regulate now rather than in 5 years or 10 years. So I think that's a very important aspect of it. And to name a few examples there, you have, for example, school teachers that have been fired due to an algorithm determining their, using historic data and then determining that this teacher should be fired. And then you have a thing like the Apple car scandal, which happened like a year and a year and a half ago, which were around a gender issue where it was discovered that even a family living together with the same economy, there were different credit limits between the male and the female, within the same family, and issues like that. And actually, it was discovered that first Apple tried to frame it on the bank that they use, Goldman Sachs, but in the end they ended up with the repercussions of it. So there's a lot of focus on the risk side
Yeah,
from the companies out there. Not just it's not just a legal issue; it's also a branding issue. So I think that's an important aspect to note there. And um,
indeed.
yeah, and another, there are other examples. A more recent example is the Frodeno case, which happened only a couple of months ago, which is actually a platform on applications which is part of the gig economy, food delivery, where it was discovered that the scoring system there had some deficiencies in terms of determining people's right to work, basically, right? So you can say that from a regulated perspective, it's a traditional industry such as finance, healthcare, public sector, transportation, and so on. That is usually the ones that are most concerned with this. But when it comes
Yeah,
to the maybe the companies outside of the regulated industries, or even for startups and scale-ups, it is also a relevant topic to discuss and be noticeable about. Um, yes, so I think in that sense you can say that um, the importance of AI governance is for me at least something that all companies out there should care about if they are deploying and using disruptive technologies. I wouldn't even say AI here because AI is such a broad topic, and also if you look at it from a regulatory perspective, you can say, for example, the EU AI Act is sort of not really defining AI as if I come from a data science background, I perceive AI as a certain thing. But if you look at it from a regulatory perspective, they don't really distinguish between one algorithm to the other algorithm. It's just all of it is
Right.
like what are the impacts of to humans for some disruptive technologies. And I think the difference from, if you look at it from 50 years ago or 100 years ago, introducing the automobile that could potentially hit pedestrians and so on, and comparing it to today, I think the difference is that the scale of things, the time it takes for an AI algorithm to do something bad is actually very, very small compared to the 50 or 100 years ago. So you can say from a historic perspective, it is sort of the same concept and the same issues, but it's just at a scale that is very, very broad and very big today. So I think that's an important thing to note as well. Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I find it interesting you sharing those examples that are, let's say, not the traditional ones that come to mind as soon as we start talking about legislation and AI governance. And some of, I think the first example you mentioned about the school teachers, this is something that, if I remember right, they mentioned on that book, The Weapons of Mass Destruction.
Exactly.
So in that book, each chapter talks about a different application and how AI use was, let's say, not effective, or was used as a weapon of destruction.
Exactly.
And to me, it's also interesting about this upcoming regulation now, the EU Act, that the regulators are starting to ask questions that business don't know how to answer, right? So I understand, like what I understand about AI governance is that it should enable business to trust the outcomes of the output of AI in a way that, there is something there that in place that will create trusted outcomes, let's say, for
Yeah.
business. So
Yeah.
you're right, it's not only about AI, but about everything that is involved in the process. So it's about the data, it's about the decision-making process and all the impact that is around the solution that is derived from data or AI.
Yeah. Correct.
And I am wondering, can this AI governance or the process, can this be automated at some point?
So I think if we start from the beginning of what kind of aspects should you look at from a company's perspective, right? And I think trustworthiness and responsible AI, concepts like that is extremely broad and extremely wide and doesn't really mean anything. But I think the concept of trust is an important aspect when it comes to the companies and the businesses out there and their clients and their users. And even more so, for example, in the public industries where it's citizens, right? And especially in the public sector, I think they have a much higher bar in terms of regulatory requirements than there are even in the financial sector, because they can do stuff that is sort of where people cannot opt out of it, right? So I think in that sense, in the public sector, there is the bar needs to be quite high, and luckily that is also the case, right? You see regulatory compliance things on AI appearing in Canada in 2017, and now. We see also multiple countries and public sector countries are sort of listing model registries publicly and so on. So there's stuff happening definitely in the public sector. But we are yet to see that sort of thing appear in the financial or the healthcare sector. For example, I mean, go into any financial company's website and you will not find a list of all the high-risk AI models they have currently deployed. So that's I think we need to get to that point at some point. But going into the details of, because I also think it doesn't have to be like a big frightening campaign of oh, now we need to do all these million things. It is also, when you look at it from a IT and a technology and a data science perspective, it's actually some pretty simple stuff you need to do. It's just that you need to figure out in which context to do what and how. And usually these things revolve around the concept of transparency, first of all, right? So transparency is transparency internally, it is transparency externally, and to me also transparency is about having what I call global explainability, so the ability to explain a model's behavior, but also explain where is the data that this model is trained on coming from, how was that data formed, how is this data transformed through the journey while creating the model. When you created the model and trained it, what was the accuracy, what was what kind of measures have you done in terms of bias, and so on. And these are again pretty they're solvable solutions, I think, but it needs to be done, right? And I think there's a lot of companies out there that are not doing that today in the right form. Another aspect is explainability, which has been sort of also discussed in various contexts. And I think for many people, explainability is something that the clients of the applications are sort of ingesting, and it doesn't have to be like that. Explainability goes all the way from the initial working with the data, training the model, and working with the production models also. So in that sense, you can say that it's pretty simple concepts when it comes to what you need to do from a technology perspective. Then there's an organizational level as well above that, and the organizational level is about human in the loop processes, setting up an organization. Usually, in some cases, we see it done with the CDOs or so the chief data officers or other people in the organization that are sort of protecting the data within the company. But we've also seen it in other forms in the organizational or in the organization structure and the organizations out there. And the final one is accountability, right? So companies also need to realize that both with the EU AI Act, but also in other regulation, that accountability is about that. Even if you purchase a third-party system out there or a third-party piece of software, then it's still you that are accountable for it if you use it against with your clients, right? So I think that's an important element about this as well. It's not just about the data that you own, but it's about that if you purchase or buy some application out there and start using it, well, then you are accountable for it as well. So that needs to be a part of the governance journey as well, and a part of the way that the organization is structured when it comes to AI governance. And finally, I just want to say also that when it comes to all of these aspects, you can say that recording the version of the data, the accuracy of the models, and monitoring these production models, making sure that they are concurrently retrained and all of that. That is possible, in an organization to do with just a piece of paper and an Excel sheet being sent around in the organization, and that works perfectly, right? As long as it's a very small organization. But very very quickly, when you talk about retraining of models, when you talk about bias mitigation, when you talk about applications and their impact on these users, not just right now, but also going ahead, then it's very difficult to manage it. So usually I say to the clients that you can do a pen and paper solution now, but it will probably you will probably be overburdened with it over time, right? So So that's sort of my approach to that one.
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, what I understood from this is that there are different aspects, and we can go with a simple solution, like you
Mhm.
described, pen and paper, or some spreadsheet, or any kind of documentation where you are tracking, say, the data you're using, like to validate the data or the algorithms, and to make sure that you have like a technical, robust solution.
Mhm.
But also, when you start like retraining models, or as you start deploying for different use cases and the organization is growing,
Yes.
then you also have to think about how agile you're being on this, right? Because at some
Yes.
point this can go out of track. So there
Yeah.
should be also a way how to manage it and to keep it up to date, so
Yes.
you are ensuring that you are like bias free and that you understand how this output is being used in the decision making process, of being transparent with everyone. And something that I like that you mentioned is that applies even if your organization is using a solution developed by a third party,
Yes.
because in the end you are integrating it in your decision making, or you are somehow plugging it into a process that internal or that you are delivering to your end customer.
Mm.
So that also needs to be transparent, right? It's not only about the technical aspects, of course they are important, but
Mm.
as you mentioned, this idea of having the human in the loop and how you make decisions using the, I don't know, machine learning, deep learning
Yeah.
results. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it like that, you can also say that the EU AI Act talks about high risk, but it also talks about limited risks, and where limited risks are sort of applied, then typically it's about transparency and other aspects around that. So you don't have to do spend 6 months doing bias mitigation on some model if there's no or if the risk is rather is not that high, right? But you need to do the risk assessments anyway, right? And I think the point is that for companies to adopt this in a real way, they need to create some sort of strategy around it. So for example, saying that, well, if some new project is formed in the organization, then make sure that if there are any applications there, that there is some sort of or risk assessment done at least, and that these applications are put in an inventory somewhere, because that means that you can at least manage them, and they can answer questions around, what kind of models do you have in your company, and so on. So I think that's step number one. Then, I mean, if you look at it from the EU AI Act perspective, there is, which is very broad. There is also a number of, verticals. So almost all of the industries are sort of adopting AI regulation in some form, and many, especially in the financial sector, the companies out there are very sort of overwhelmed with regulatory requirements, right? Coming from all sorts of places, like each of the individual countries, UK, Canada, Singapore, and so on. They all have their own sort of AI regulation at the moment, and the financial companies are overwhelmed with different sort of regulatory requirements. And and even China actually just recently published a new regulatory requirement also for there. So there's a lot of things happening there, and I think one way to manage that is through some controls, so that you sort of can control what is going on in the organization in an automated way. And this is where pen and paper solutions is definitely not enough anymore. That you need to have something which is scalable, where you can apply your strategy, where you can apply the different regulatory requirements and the controls for that, and then as things happens by automation in the company. And the same we're seeing on the
Interesting.
technologies, on the data for the data scientists. They are also, especially again in the financial and the healthcare as well, very much in the healthcare, are overburdened with compliance people coming to them and saying, "Oh, do this, do that, do this." and they have no idea how to do it, right? So in that sense, on the data science side, there's a need of upskilling and getting more education in this area, and also I think from and there needs to be sort of a way for the compliance people and the business people to sort of hand over these requirements to the technology people in a good way, so that they understand what to do, right? So I think that part of it is also a critical aspect of it. And then you can say, well, if you look at it from a European perspective, and compared it to what happened with GDPR, you can say, well, for GDPR, I think Europe was sort of leading that effort, right? And after that happened, suddenly all of the the US and the other countries around the world, they started following on the Data Privacy Act and all of these things, and that made Europe sort of a leader sort of in the privacy sector, basically, right? And if you look at it from a global perspective, I think Europe is sort of lagging behind on AI implementations, and businesses that are based on forming their businesses on AI. And I think that for the EU AI Act, I believe that we could in Europe be sort of the leading in terms of the regulatory requirements, and bringing that to the rest of the world.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. I apologize if you hear some background noise. I have a cat here that is hungry. And but going back to this idea of maybe Europe lagging behind in the AI implementation, what I see is that there's a lot of potential to leverage this regulation, or the regulation that is about to come, to really make companies pay more attention to the process of developing and deploying AI in-house, so that maybe there's not enough attention being paid. And so far, at least, also part of my experience as a data scientist in organization is that a lot of the times the data department is something that is not that well connected to business, or even you have companies that have a data lab that is like, I don't know, even in another location or another city. So it's a lot of the times it's not really embedded in the business, and you can see a lot of advantages or disadvantages of doing that. But now bringing it up together with the legislation, and you mentioned this exchange between the other departments, let's say compliance and the business, to the technology. So I think that having this sort of AI strategy and having the governance and more transparency, it will enable more trust to be created, like for the people working together and developing this inside the organization, And then, my hope is that this would even foster the implementation of AI.
I agree, right? A lot of the regulation talks about what they call material or immaterial harm. So it's not really about the data anymore, and that's why I think the agenda for many of the it is also about the data, but I think it's an important aspect for the organizations out there and their journeys to sort of align not just with the data privacy agenda and everything around data, but also for the impacts of these applications and the potential harms that it can bring, right? So bringing some more focus into that area, I think is a crucial element for many organizations out there.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of ways that we can be proactive and collaborate around the risk management for the AI solutions and the AI applications. Maybe before we wrap it up, would you like to share your insider look on the regulations that are coming next, and like your experiences with the clients that you have supported so far? Maybe leave a call to action to people that want to know a bit more about your solution and about AI governance in general.
Yeah. So basically, we're seeing two kinds of clients, right? We're seeing the clients that want to lead in this area, so they want to brand themselves as being, responsible and trustworthy in terms of AI and data as well. And then we have, the companies that are sort of that are afraid that something bad will happen, right? So from our perspective, we have in 2021 AI, we're providing consulting engagements, but most importantly, we're providing a platform and some tools and some components that makes the compliance journey and the AI governance journey much easier for the companies out there. And there's two parts of it, right? There's the part around evidence collection, so collecting evidence from different events happening throughout the AI lifecycle, and then there is the part around making sure that there are the right components and the right tools that the data scientists and the IT people needs in order to do this in an easy way. We're helping our clients with that in different areas. And you can say that there's also a maturity phase in this, that some companies are very early stage and they have some stuff which they might be afraid of doing something bad with, and then you have other companies that have already deployed into production. So it's a very sort of varying field of clients that we have, and it's mostly in the regulated sector, financial, healthcare, public sector, and so on.
I see. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rasmus. It was really an insightful exchange. I enjoyed learning from you. And I will say it now because it will be published soon in our Data Lift Summit next year here in Berlin. You will join with a keynote talking more about AI governance. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And yes, thank you for spending some minutes with us. Thank you to anyone that spent also some minutes of their lunch break together with us. And if you're watching the recording, join us every Wednesday live at noon. Hope to see you soon. And thank you again, Rasmus, for today.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye.